Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about transit south node, square, opposition, or inconjunct one's natal Mercury. Now, when we're talking about transits that involve the south node, it can be about what we're going away from, the past, what you're leaving behind. Could be what you're naturally proficient in, but also overdeveloped and redundant qualities. And the thing about this transit is when it's basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Mercury. Now, I'm going to elaborate on it. When I say basically adverse aspect, what I'm saying is, of course, squares and oppositions, those aspects are negative and adverse in astrology. Now, the inconjunct, though it's neutral, a neutral aspect can have good and bad qualities, and it coupled with the fact that an inconjunct aspect can often require an adjustment or transition. So those, because of that, I mean, a transition or adjustment can cause some exasperation and tension. So basically, collectively, I do see this as an adverse transit. Now, the fact that the transit south node, excuse me, again, basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Mercury, well, it may manifest in what you're going away from the past, what it could be naturally proficient in, overdeveloped and redundant qualities, may conflict at this time with your communications. It could be where maybe could be happening as you might be dealing with someone from your past, and it might be conflicting with your day-to-day communications. It could even be your short journeys. Let's say that the natal Mercury is in Pisces. It could be very convoluted short journeys, and maybe ones that involve a lot of sacrificing and altruism, as an example. And the thing about this is too, it could be at this time where Mercury is connected with what you're learning and assimilating information. So again, this could go back to someone from the past. Might be challenging. If you're involved in just trying to, could be just getting basic information. You could just be going online and reading, trying to find some instructions on how to program or remote control. It could be that these overdeveloped qualities that are connected with the South Node transit might be challenging, your connections, with siblings, with cousins, with neighbors at this time. If the transit South Node, say, is in Aquarius, it could be maybe there's some idiosyncratic behavior being exhibited, or rebellious behavior, just very strong non-conforming behavior. And the thing about it is, this is where this transit is connected also. I mean, Mercury is connected with the rational mind, rational thinking. And people that might be coming out of your past might be challenging this time. Maybe they're driving you figuratively crazy. They're causing, I mean, it can be something where, the South Node also, I mean, again, could be what you're naturally proficient in. What you want to really, what you might be really good at least at the time of this transit. Now, the natal South Node, during your life, can be overdeveloped, redundant qualities that you carry with you constantly, and also something you're naturally good at. I have my natal South Node in Virgo in the 5th house, which can give really, I mean, it can be very detail-oriented, analytical ability, things that I enjoy, intellectual, analytical, fun, amusement, and enjoyment. When you have this transit, you may feel really adept in that, based on the sign and the house that it's in that particular area. But you have to. But when you have this transit, those things, whether there might be an obsession on it or what have you, they might challenge your dealings, with your siblings, with your cousins, your neighbors, maybe even people that were prominent in your early education, or people that in your short journeys, in those travels. It can also be, could be something you're trying to get away from, may be challenging rational thinking, whether it might be someone from your past, or it could be a criminal background or a bad credit history, and there's difficulty in actually going away from that. It might also, this transit may manifest in having really strong difficulty in getting away from what I call mercurial things that Mercury can roll. It can even be, again, going back to siblings, cousins, neighbors, and might be people that were prominent in your early education, or people you know well in short journeys. There might be some reason that you're trying to get away from, whether it could just be simple isolation reasons, alone time. You might have more of a desire for solitude and seclusion at this time, more so than usual. Another thing too is that anatomically speaking, okay, Mercury is connected, okay, with the arms, the hands, the nerves, lungs, and breathing. So it might be more difficult getting away from those issues. If you have them during this transit, you might be, it could be where it might be more intensified, or it's just harder to actually maybe deal with them at this time and maybe alleviate problems that are connected with it. Now, the thing about, and it could be where you might be dealing, again, with someone from the past. You might be, the things you feel you're naturally proficient in at this time, you might really enjoy, you might be enamored with, might be challenged, may be a challenge in even doing those things because of those issues, if you do have any of those things anatomically that I stated is connected with Mercury. Now, another thing, going back to the fact that Mercury is also connected with short journeys and local transportation, so it may be a time where you might be, those things might challenge people you may have known in your past, and also with respect to people that may believe that the South Node is connected with past lives. It may be someone you feel is from a past life. Maybe it's harder to communicate with that person at this time, because you're talking about a basically adverse aspect with South Node and Mercury. Especially if you've got the transit of the South Node, let's say it's opposite the natal Mercury. That person might be really at a distance at this time, and it might be harder to communicate with that person. And these people might be challenging, again, your short journeys, your local transportation at this time. So anyway, now another way this transit may manifest, again, could be somebody from the past may adversely affect your communications. Now, let's say, for example, if the transit South Node is in Aquarius in the 8th house, it could be somebody that may have given you some very altruistic and selfless, which is Aquarius, support. And the 8th house is the house of support, whether it's moral, emotional, or monetary support. And also, too, another way this transit may be expressed, it may be harder to get away from, which is the South Node. It could be, again, matters with neighbors, with siblings, with cousins. If there might be some activities or things they're asking you to do, there might be some demands from these people that you might be trying to pull away from, but you're having a hard time extricating yourself from it at this time. Now, let's say if the transit South Node is in Sagittarius in the 4th house, it could be, maybe you're trying to do, something for them as far as expanding, adding extension, a partition, Sagittarius in the home, which is the 4th house. Now, also something, another way this transit may manifest, it could be something that might be affecting you to the detriment, which is the South Node, may challenge short journeys. Now, let's say, for example, if the transit South Node is in Pisces in the 6th house, it could be a health-related issues with the feet or the toes, the lymphatic or immune system at this time, general lethargy or weakness. It could be something because the 6th house, of course, is the house of health, and what I just described is connected with Pisces. Now, also, too, the South Node is connected with the comfort zone, what you might be complacent in, what you feel comfortable in. And at this time, what you feel comfortable doing, which is connected with the South Node, may conflict with what you're, trying to learn, trying to assimilate, at this time. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, now I want to go back to the transit I was describing before. I mean, going back where it's harder, it could be harder to get away, it's still about hard to get away from neighbors, siblings, or cousins, which is Mercury at this time. And again, what really this could be, I stated the South Node in Sagittarius in the fourth house. It could be, I stated that it could be harder to get away from expanding, or as far as a partition, which is Sagittarius in the home or fourth. But I would say as well, I mean, if the transit, if the natal Mercury is in the fourth house in Sagittarius, I would really say that even more would be connected with harder to get out of things with siblings that may need an extension in the home. That might be, it's just Sagittarius, an expansion, or you could say partition or extension of the home at this time, and that might make it a little bit harder to get away from. And just want to elaborate on that. Now, again, going back to what I was stating before, what you feel comfortable doing, which is a South Node, may conflict with what you're trying to learn, and as far as assimilating information. Now, let's say, if the transit of the South Node is in Capricorn in the 11th house, it could be what you feel very comfortable doing. It could be mentoring, astrology. Capricorn could be connected with mentoring. The 11th house is associated with astrology. It could be computers, electronics, aviation, meteorology, as some examples. And anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.